So, what does it mean to remain invested for at least 2 years? Well, USCIS actually, I think, took a favorable action for investors. And instead of saying that the 2 years has to coincide directly with the 2 years of the conditional green card, they've actually said that the 2 year period begins on the date that your full amount of investment money, so either 800,000 or 1,050,000, leaves the new commercial enterprise and reaches the project and the job creating entities. So once the $800,000 investment or the $1,050,000 investment gets deployed into that project, the 2 years starts. And interestingly enough, that could be well before actually the 2 year period of conditional permanent residence. So this actually represented a good change for investors for the most part, because the USCIS, instead of tagging this timeline to the 2 year green card, just said it's 2 years after the project gets it and starts using the money. So it also basically addresses, when can that 2 year period start? What if it happens even before the USCIS adjudicates an EB-5 petition, the I-526? So they've said that the 2 year period begins when the project receives the full amount of money from the investor, right? And they've given us a little example in the question and answers that, they've even said that the 2 year period could even be before you file the I-526 petition. And where that happens, you should continue to maintain the investment until at least the 526 is approved. That way they can appropriately evaluate eligibility. That's what they say in their guidance on the website. But it doesn't mean that the funds need to be deployed to the project during the time your I-526 is pending, or immediately after the I-526 is approved. It just says that your 2 year period starts when it goes to the project. So what does that mean? I think the rule actually hasn't changed that much for how USCIS evaluates this. Generally, it's always been the case that the funds have to be deployed to the job creating entity for the project in furtherance of job creation, to create the nexus between the investment and the job creation for the project. So we think that at this point it would be fine to deploy the funds basically at any time up through, the end of the 2 year conditional permanent residence, where you're then filing the I-829. And if the 2 years has not ended by the time you're filing the I-829, that's okay. But we should have some documentation in the I-829 petition to show that that investment will remain outstanding with the job creating entity for at least that 2 year period.
And I think that the main kind of point that I want investors to walk away with from this webinar and kind of this reading of the language that's very plain from USCIS and how they're interpreting this is that what USCIS has done over time is kind of say, look, as long as you are doing the things that we ask you to do with your investment, we are less worried about the time frame that you are doing those in, as long as you're meeting the overall requirements. It can happen very early in your investment process. It can happen kind of in the middle of your investment process. And it may actually happen very late in your immigration process, right? So there's two different processes going on at the same time. But we're going to look at this holistically, and as long as you're making a good faith effort and the documents show that you're going to achieve the goals that you have set out to, and that we have kind of set forth the standards, you are going to be able to get not only your conditional green card, but also your permanent green card.
also think the USCIS did this because they know sometimes projects get delayed, right? And just because a project gets delayed doesn't mean it will never happen. Lots of things happen outside of the control of even the people that have the best intentions, right? Pretty much every project ever is dealing with municipalities and government approvals and things like that, and sometimes they get delayed. And that's outside of the control of everyone. And here again, even where delays like that happen, that might not coincide with a 2-year green card period, now it doesn't matter anymore. And so, I think again, this rule is meant to provide more flexibility for investors, and it in general is a very good rule for investors.